and on the Twitters. I'm here with my good old buddy Tristan, who's been, hitching it up in the bungalow in El Salvador. But there was an event that was held by Jack Cruz this past weekend called the Age of Light. And I wanted to ask him about it because I am not there. I had the unfortunate event of not being in sunny El Salvador. So Tristan, how's it going down there?
Yeah, it's good, man. It's fucking hot. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not built for 100-degree weather in March, but no, it's really nice. Definitely what I wanted to Salvador in general, like they're doing a lot of great things, and the Age of Light, Jack, Dr. Cruz, Palestra, who put this on, it aligns very well with a lot of things we talk about on the show. So it's kind of cool what they're doing from a high level. It's never been done before in a modern world, trying to really, I guess, start from scratch on building a society the right way,
Hmm.
both from a money perspective and now a health freedom perspective. But yeah, it's great. UV is strong, and got to the beach. I did a movement workshop with Erwan Lacour, who we've had on the show, which was really awesome. So that was pre the conference, and yeah, it was awesome. I did a 3-minute breath hold. Never thought I would be able to do that. I know you and I were kind of practicing those periodically, but
Yeah.
it's impressive when you can kind of get into it and really sink in deep. So Erwan is no joke. He's the real deal, and I'm excited. He's writing a book called Hold Your Breath, so we'll definitely have to get him back on the show when that comes out. But overall, yeah, it's good stuff. So I guess we could start with the conference. We could start with El Salvador. Up to you.
Let's start with El Salvador in general because it's sort of a unique place in the world where I've been seeing you guys posting photos of like actively purchasing things with Bitcoin. So I'd love to know what that's like. What's that feel like to like be able to buy things with Bitcoin? And it's like generally like you have signs for it. It's not just like you have to ask someone who's never
Hmm.
heard of the concept before. Maybe we could kind of start with just sort of the uh the culture difference, but also just like the experience you've had with that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we kind of touch upon it when we talked to Luke Mikic a little bit.
Mhm.
But coming here, this is honestly one of the things I was most excited for, was to actually experience what it's like to be in a quote unquote Bitcoin economy. And it's sort of a Bitcoin economy. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything because I want people to know the truth about El Salvador. And yeah, they've made Bitcoin legal tender alongside the US dollar. So you can come here, you can pay in dollars. If you want to pay in Bitcoin, it depends where you are. So we went to El Zante, which is quote unquote Bitcoin beach for, a few days. And there are many merchants that will accept Bitcoin for payment. So they have signs that advertise it. And, that's kind of been indoctrinated there. And it's, part of the local economy. However, it's still, to me, I get this feeling that the people there, they don't like, they accept Bitcoin and it's just like something that someone told them to do. Like, I'm not sure how many of the locals like really get it. I think they understand, and they're like, they trust Bukele. And if you've seen the news, Bukele put like 5,000 Bitcoin into cold storage, which is like 500 million or 400 million dollars. And if you do the math, like per capita, it's now, because of that, like one of the most rich, I guess, per capita nations, because they have such a low population here, and they have such a large holdings of Bitcoin. And there's some criticism to that. Some people are saying it should go back to the taxpayers. But if you can look at it, like other nation states would hold gold historically, and that's what would be backing their currency. Now Bukele is doing that with Bitcoin, which is cool because it's providing them a strong foundation to move forward, and then has that credibility to back whatever is the core of their economy. But I will say, yeah, going back to paying with Bitcoin, extremely cool experience. I've done it before. So I've sold bison for Bitcoin. I've paid people in Bitcoin at conferences, but I've never done it consistently over a multi-day period, like paying for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Mhm.
That's the other thing here. One of the downsides to El Salvador, extremely, extremely challenging to source quality food
Mhm.
at like a grocery store. There's a really cool place called Beef Back Better, which we connected with on Twitter and paid them Bitcoin to get beef, but they only deliver like, once a week. So we went a week without having that. And I ate out more in the past week than I have in the past 4 years combined, probably. And that's all right. But definitely a challenge is, in El Zonte, they don't even have like a real grocery store, and the grocery store 30 minutes away is all right. So again, it is still kind of it's a developing third world country. So there's a lot of progress to be made in a lot of areas, but it was a cool experience to pay for breakfast, pay for lunch, dinner, coffee in Bitcoin. However, in a lot of places, a couple of places, I should say, they actually charge you a premium. They're
Mhm.
like, instead of a discount. So it's kind of like, oh, I don't know how to do it. Like, so most places it was fine. I mean, we ended up eating at the one restaurant like 10 times because it was just, they had really good ceviche and raw fish, and they took Bitcoin for payment. So I thought it was cool. But I'm not sure how much the everyday person in El Salvador on the ground gets it. And I'm not sure that they're holding it, but certainly they're believing in their president to lead them in a good direction. They're very grateful. There's a lot of construction projects going on. Like, there's a lot of infrastructure being developed. And overall, I thought the infrastructure was pretty impressive because I've been to Costa Rica, and actually the roads in El Salvador are far better than in Costa Rica.
Mhm.
And there's just a lot of development going on. But yeah, that's kind of my opinion from the Bitcoin experience. I think it's great. I think it's going to continue to evolve. But if you go outside of El Zante, there's not that many people really accepting Bitcoin for payment. I mean, they probably would if you like twisted their arm, but they kind of just want dollars. Like they're just in survival mode, and the dollars are
Yeah.
really important to them regardless. And it's, the dollars are stable, so it's not like you're in Argentina or in Lebanon where their currency is absolute shit and it's inflating like so much. Like the dollar is their currency and it's pretty stable, so they like Bitcoin because
Wonder if we lost him. Ah, yeah, we lost him. We'll get him back. The joys of.
all right,
There we are.
am
I
I
see
back?
you again. You're back.
So there's a great example of the the downside of El Salvador is this Airbnb. I asked my wife, I was like, we just got a router, like we just got one, like in the past month, and yeah, it's obviously not going to be the same quality. So there's a lot of progress still to be had, but it's impressive that they're kind of like the only country that's heads down, really committed to making it better as soon as possible, and they're thinking strategically.
There seems
And
to be
I
a lot
told
of
you kind of,
Oh yeah, no, I'll let you go. I was just gonna say there seems to be a
I
lot of like community, like they're all in this mission together, like sense of vibe.
I think, I mean, I think they're just really appreciative that in the span of 5 years, they've gone from living in fear and living in poverty to having a safe place for their children to walk around and actually grow up in, instead of
Hmm.
maybe being courted into being part of a gang. So that is tremendous improvement. And yeah, like I think people, I don't know, it depends how much you traveled. Like, people underestimate the amount of progress a country can make in a few years, but they underestimate how much you can do in 10 years. So I think that's kind of the right trajectory and the right analysis of what's going on here. It's like they've done a lot of great things, but there's still a long way to go. There's
Mm,
such a gap to
definitely.
overcome, and I would like to see that being elevated with the country and the people who are from here, not like in Costa Rica where the people who made all the money and the businesses were all foreigners.
Yeah, that's one thing that's like come across my mind is that we see a lot of people like us move there, do well. And I'm just speaking about Central America sort of in general, but places like Costa Rica, and go there and do well. But that's sort of like in the benefit of like where we've come from firstly, not like we grew up there and then sort of overcame these hurdles that maybe were presented to us. It's sort of different in that way. That's why I think some of this legislation that we'll talk about soon that we don't necessarily know all about yet, but that was spoken about at the Age of Light is sort of exciting because it is sort of like, updating the software to a system that's been broken. So I think that's kind of exciting as well. So maybe we can kind of talk about your experience at the Age of Light, anything that's allowed to be said. I don't know like about like anything that went on really other than the photos I've seen. So I'd love to hear about like kind of what went on and the things you heard from other people at the event and who you spoke to.
Yeah, maybe we could start with who I spoke to. I mean, the event was a smashing success in terms of like the people I met, connected with. It was yeah, it was one of a kind in that regard because there's not that many like-minded people who are really trying to build solutions from a systems perspective across the board for decentralization, and that was certainly the case here. And yeah, there's a lot of cool people there. Had the chance to talk to Yusef Bukele for like an hour and a half about the vision, who is the younger brother, of the president, and it was incredible. It's the real deal. It's proof of work. Like you get to know kind of the thought process behind what they're trying to do. They know Can you hear me, Ryan? You're on mute.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Where did this might just for the reality of
You
the
were talking
situation.
about speaking to Yusuf, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. So I was just really impressed, by the ability to assess the situation and understand it's a lot of work. Um, but having the long-term vision of really kind of building an arc is what he told me. For people who care about their individual qualities and they want to attract people with that mindset, but they simultaneously want to uplift before kids are going to be completely indoctrinated. Mentioned kind of the cultural, I guess, appropriation of society that's happened through Western media and Western technology. So they kind of want to intervene there before it really gets bad in that regard.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it'll be interesting to see like over the next couple years what plays out, but it sounds like a lot of exciting stuff. Was the event just sort of like people gave talks in that one area that I saw like Jack speak and stuff like that, and people just sort of took turns? Is that how the event went, or did they have like other stuff go on?
Yeah, it was mostly talks and then like short talks, like 10 to 30-minute talks from, folks in the space and a lot of collaboration before, after, during, all the above. So it was cool. You know, it was again from a collaboration perspective, just getting thoughts around of what would you do in this type of situation, or what's your living scenario like currently, what's your vision, what's your goals. There's a good mix because there's some talks obviously on decentralized health, there's some talks on Bitcoin, there's some more technical talks, there's some talks on virology. It was a good mix, yeah. And that was probably the first conference I've been to where I've heard talks from people from a pretty well-rounded sovereignty background,
Mm,
and that's something that made me really excited because I've been to Bitcoin conferences, I've been to some health events, and a lot of times it's very one-dimensional for me. So what I was most impressed with was the people who were in attendance and the people who spoke were very well-rounded, or at least a lot of them were very well-rounded, and that's awesome, because that's what we need. We need more Bitcoiners who are very focused on their health and driving that forward. And we need more people in the health space understanding the importance and significance of money and Bitcoin, because obviously that's the root cause to a lot of issues in the health system. So it was cool. I mean, just the amount you would meet, I met some people that are like 50 years old, just, they've been a member of Jack's forum for a while, or some other avenue, and they just live the life. They're actually proof of work. The people who are the most authentic are not the people with the most followers. They're the
mm.
people who have like 100 followers online, and they're like almost off grid, but they're super tan, getting outside every day. They've owned Bitcoin for years. That's really impressive to me, and I met so many people like that, and that was really cool. So it's awesome to get out of the small town and really see how many people out there really prioritize these things. But it was a spectrum, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, the talks were great, and the event venue was cool. We were like next to volcano, um feeling that magnetic field, feeling the energy, I guess, which was cool because it wasn't super hot up there.
Yeah.
And yeah.
No, that's cool. One thing I wanted to ask, and maybe we can kind of get into this a little bit, is like Jack gave a really good talk, and I only got to see part of it, because it wasn't public per se. Of what was his talk about his discussions of medical freedom with the Bukele administration. I'd love to sort of like what sort of explain that moment for yourself, but also like some of the things he said, because it is a big deal to talk about, changing these laws or even thinking about them in general, to giving that sort of position of power back to the everyday person for their own self sovereignty. So I'd love to just like kind of go through that moment with us through that talk.
Yeah, and I don't know all the details. Haven't read anything, but really it seems like what happened was the administration, they got, Jack and the administration got connected and they hit it off because they both value, individual sovereignty, especially from a health perspective. And the story there is quite an interesting one at the beginning. I think it was a surprise from Jack's side of thing that they were so open to working with him and really valued what he had to say, because obviously he can come off as like pretty intimidating to people, but that shows their ability to recognize someone who knows what they're talking about, which is obviously the case in that experience. But really it seems like they gave him kind of like a blank piece of paper and were like, hey, if you were allowed to from scratch develop a bill that outlines all of the medical health related laws, what would you do? Like what would that encompass? And again, I don't know the full scope, but you can just start to use your imagination, right? Like no mandates, no pharmaceutical companies allowed to promote things like they do in the US. Yeah, like no vaccine schedules.
Hmm.
Really just improving the quality of healthcare. I know there's rumors about a hospital building from scratch. I don't know any details on that, but just imagine you have a blank piece of paper and someone says design a healthcare system, design a country, and have the laws in place that really from the ground up considers health in the way it should. Tap water that's really high quality, like reducing the use of plastics, which is something I talked to Yusuf about because like you get here, it's shocking how much plastic is everywhere, on the roads, on the streets, just everyone's drinking, eating out of plastic. He's like, yeah, this is something we've thought about. This is something we're going to fix. It's just all those types of examples, really.
Yeah, no,
Can you
I
still
think
hear
that's
me?
really big. Yeah, no, I'm totally serious. I mean, it's interesting
Okay.
because I think it's I mean, like I said, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But one thing I sort of want to have a discussion with you about is like this idea of they're in sort of a good position because they're sort of like bare bones, like we can build this up, like we can kind of tear it down and build it up. Whereas when you look at like a system like the United States that's been so established and there's just so much tape everywhere and there's so much self-interest and special interest that it's like, how do you make like I don't personally see something like that happening here, um, at least soon. And what it would require is basically like you'd have to tear everything down and like build it back up from scratch. And that seems like such a massive endeavor just based on the way we built our economy, the way systems are built up, the way power has been distributed, and things like that. So I sort of love your opinion based on that, seeing it sort of like in a state of infancy there. They have this opportunity that sort of like us in 1776, we had this opportunity to make something new. They have this opportunity to build something really great that the rest of the world can sort of use as a model. Um, but how do you see like principles like that applying to a more westernized country? I think it'd be very hard.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible, to be honest. I mean, we're so entrenched in our political system. Again, there's so much gridlock. Like, have a very hard time believing that that would
Ah, shoot, how do you get kicked this time? Oh my lord. Oh man. So fun, guys. This is a good one. See, the funnest ones are when it doesn't go right. Let's see, just message me. What's he got to say? She says, ah, fuck. Yeah, ah, fuck. I feel that. But no, I definitely agree. Like, I think in order to have like what Jack sort of proposed in these sort of medical freedom suggestions, based on what I heard, was idea of like reducing vaccine schedules down to bare minimum to none. He's rebooting his computer, guys, so he should be back in a second. It would require just like a complete unraveling of a system that is so utterly beyond repair that I don't personally see it happening. It actually makes me question even staying in the United States. But there's so many plus and minuses. In the chat, maybe I can ask in the chat, what are you guys thinking around these things and like taking yourself um out of the equation? Because there's really, to a degree, only so much we can do on our own that they'll let us. Oh, he's back. There he is. I can stop rambling now.
it's tough out here, man. But I don't
Yeah.
know how much you heard, but basically, I was saying it's almost impossible to
Yeah.
implement this in the West or in the US. It's just never going to happen to this degree, which is why it's so cool. They can serve as an inspiration, they can serve as a model. But what I think about is, can I, take this and use this inspiration and then collaborate with, say, local legislators, maybe in Wyoming, which is
Hmm.
like the more of the end of the freedom spectrum in the United States, and can we implement something locally? And the answer is yes, we can. Like one of the things Jack brought up, I think, in the talks, like, talking about maybe like the street lights or just the
Yep.
lighting standards, right? Like
Yep.
this, like every hospital, every school, Maybe it's like you have better lighting and you have like stricter EMF and you've cleaned up the tap water, it has no fluoride. That all could be done at a local level. It actually needs to be done at a local level in the United States because we have such bureaucracy dictating what's going on. And there are societies that have really high standard of quality for things like water, like in Austria where my mom is from. The tap water is better than the bottled water at the store. Why? Because they have those standards of quality in place. So this is where the argument between, again, like government versus no government is kind of a challenging one, because if you have things that are implemented by a government agency or by a regulator that actually is for the best interest of the people, then it actually can work really well. But at the same time, it only takes, you know, it doesn't take long for that to backfire. However,
Yeah.
I do think we can implement change at the local level, and that's what's the biggest takeaway for me is I want to take all these lessons learned. I want to take all this motivation, this energy, take it back home with me and get the best builders in the US, in the Rocky Mountains, in Wyoming, and see how can we implement this here, at least anything in this regard, and continue to look to El Salvador as kind of leading the way. I mean, it's crazy to say that, right? Like that's insane. Like you would have never, if you said that about any country like years ago, like people would laugh at you. But that's the situation we're in now, and that's because they don't have the bureaucratic red tape to hold them back. And but we can implement it. I just think it needs to be local, and inherently that makes it more decentralized anyway.
No, I agree. I mean, I think the greatest effect anyone has, like even when we look at things like elections, is like your local area around you is going to impact you the most, anyways. So that's really a huge area of focus when you want to create something that's systemically changing. Because on a high level, I mean, there's so many things that are out of our realm of control that I think are used as optics for us to focus on to create frustration and sort of this idea of division. And when you look around, it's like we have so many more similarities than differences. Like we all want to be happy. We all want to like have good education and like access to health and just be healthier and all of these things. So I think the premise is already there. We just have to, like you said, I think taking these ideas and taking it on a local level is like probably the only realistic way we could do it here in the US or some of these westernized countries. But like you said, it's not a black and white sort of idealistic concept that we're talking about. This sort of like this idea of like all government is bad, or like the other side where it's like you have to have crazy powerful government in order to succeed. It's really like kind of this gray goop of stuff, because it's just not how life works. Like life isn't a black and white answer, and that's, I think, the way we got to look at it. So I think the more proactive you are, uh, the better things can be. But one thing, actually, because this is part of our discussion today, I wanted to ask you around things like 5G, because I know you have some updates on that as well that I wanted to get into. Was there discussions around that for down there and how they're thinking about non-native EMFs in this world that they're trying to build as well? Like, was that a topic of discussion at the summit?
No, I didn't hear any conversations about EMFs specifically. I'm sure Jack wrote some stuff in the bills saying like, hospitals or schools probably need to be lower EMF areas. I mean, they have this type of legislation already in Eastern Europe and Russia that, public
Hmm.
areas should be, they have much lower, much more stringent safety limits when it comes to EMFs in the radio frequency spectrum and also in the power frequency spectrum. So again, I would be shocked if it wasn't in there, but no, there's no specific discussion. And they're looking for people. This is a giant, massive task, and potentially could be working, with folks like us to help them kind of proliferate these ideas. And again, I just want to go back to saying like, yeah, we're looking to El Salvador because it has to start somewhere, and they have the opportunity to do it here. But on the local level, like everything always starts small, right? But it's like if you get one or two towns in Wyoming, Colorado, somewhere small to implement some of these things from El Salvador, and then it kind of just catches momentum from there. Like it doesn't just happen it's not going to happen at a nationwide level. It's not going to happen in a big city. It's going to happen in small towns, and then the natural capitalistic, response should be well, people will feel better, proof of work, truth will resonate through. They'll move there. I mean, there'll be stories about it, and then that's how the message spreads. And then again, we have the internet, so we have the ability to share these ideas collectively. So that's the beauty of this is, we don't have to be living in the dark and then like miss all the opportunity to affect the change in our community. We can just go and act on it.
100%. 100%. So speaking of EMF though, you did have some stuff that you wanted to talk about around 5G rollout and stuff like that. So I'd actually really, really love to hear sort of the stuff you've been diving into recently around 5G.
Yeah, well, you're not gonna like it. I don't even know if I've
Oh,
told you about this,
I
but
know I'll hate it, but I've already had such a bad weekend, dude. It doesn't matter. Like just lay it all out there.
uh, well, basically, somebody who's listening to our podcast reached out to me who works in the telecom industry for a big three provider and said that the podcast Rob Rabick and I did was, mostly correct, but there are some areas that were not necessarily 100% accurate, which to me is like, I was so excited to talk to this person. I was like, yes, tell me more. Like, it's really hard to find this information out online. That's not by mistake. And again, this is someone who's not like fully on board that EMFs are extremely detrimental to your health. They have skepticism, they are decentralized, but not fully on board. So it's amazing, talked for an hour plus. And actually, funny enough, this person worked like in our region, Ryan. So there's a lot of there's a lot of just examples there, but basically said that millimeter waves are rolled out more than I let off on, which is sad, but it still kind of holds true to what I said. So I said, based on the data I found, it didn't seem like millimeter waves were being used. And it's kind of true, but it's also kind of not true. So all top like 70 cities, they have millimeter wave infrastructure and they are actively being used. However, like I did say, it's highly restricted to downtown areas, entertainment venues, and specifically like airports and high traffic areas. So basically, it's kind of what I said, but that actually are rolled out way more than I thought. So it is a problem. Then it's like, well, maybe again, I was saying I think people probably shouldn't live in the cities if they are really concerned about their health. More so, not from a millimeter wave perspective, that definitely adds on to it, but just the general consensus that higher population equals higher power density of radio frequencies and EMFs. And it's only going to continue to get worse because there's more and more devices coming online every single day. So that was pretty cool information to know. And we kind of argued on, how the higher power of beamforming and all these things, and didn't really get a consensus opinion on it. But made the argument that, yeah, it is actually easier to avoid 5G. Millimeter waves are easier to avoid because they're higher frequency, the range is really poor, they're highly targeted. But again, if you're in an entertainment venue, if you're in an airport, you are getting blasted regardless. And then most importantly, in my opinion, is like without consent. So the recommendation for me stays the same. If you really want to take control of your health, if you're sick and healing, I would highly recommend avoiding highly densely populated areas. And the airport is what it is. Like, you're not going to spend like days in an airport. You're only there for like an hour and a half. So, okay, that's bad. But if you live downtown and that's where you're sleeping every night and you're working there, you're living there, that to me is a way bigger thing to attack. And I still, again, would highly recommend even moving to the suburbs could be a tremendous impact positively for your health. And that's only going to continue to get worse as more devices come online. So it was pretty cool. I mean, I'm glad I found out that information because, like I said, the internet has very little updates on 5G and millimeter wave rollouts. And yeah, it was cool to get insider insight.
Yeah, I don't know. That didn't actually scare me as much as I was thinking it might scare me. I was thinking there's gonna be something like something dramatic that I wasn't like completely aware of. That doesn't surprise me at all. And it's actually interesting to see as like you see places like Salt Lake Valley where I'm at sort of develop and grow because the way they're building things due to the price of housing and things like that is you're seeing a lot more of like apartment communities and or like townhome communities prop up. And then this is sort of driving a this idea of fitting more people into smaller and smaller spaces, therefore increasing the density of all these things. So it's like if you live in the suburbs and maybe you have a Wi-Fi router, you can kind of turn that off. Now you're not really getting knocked by your neighbor's Wi-Fi as much as I live. Like, let's say you live in a townhome and you're sort of in like a city shopping center. There's a 5G tower like over there. In addition to that, but you're also getting like all this stuff from all these other people, and so you're way worse off. And some people just like, you're in a crapshoot. But it's like if you're in an apartment complex, you turn off your Wi-Fi. We just lost Tristan. I'm sure he'll be back in a minute. You're just surrounded by it. And so the prospect of actually making meaningful change in your own environment diminishes via the population density that you're in. So that was just me rambling a little bit, but Tristan, we'll try and get him back in here. But it's not surprising. I mean, one of those things is just like we know living in a city that the further away you can get from electromagnetic radiation of any kind, the better it is. Like distance is your friend. Distance is basically probably the best defense you do have. That's why me and Tristan talk a lot about sleep sanctuaries. We actually shot a video that I need to edit about that, about creating sort of an optimal sleep sanctuary for you so that you do have a diminished, amount of electromagnetic radiation happening in your bedroom when you're sleeping, where your brain is supposed to be detoxing and your body is restoring. And this vital time of healing, like I just went had surgery over the weekend, won't get into it, but they'll like you bet your bottom I'm focused on having as optimal sleep environment as possible. I actually took a trip out from where I normally live to be away from the city as far as possible while I'm in this sort of healing phase myself, and it's just that important. So let's see if Tristan can get back in here and cut me off. Finally, I get my moment, and there he is. He's back. I was just kind of going on about the population density problem within cities because people have this idea that we talked about, I was talking about sleep sanctuary and creating minimization of non-native EMFs. But if you live in like an apartment complex or downtown, it's still sort of like this upriver battle that you're trying to kayak up this like immense stream because there's just so much density that you can't really get away from it to a meaningful degree. Hopefully
Yeah,
you can hear
no,
me.
totally. Uh, yeah, I can hear you. It's spot on, and again, I think it's just like people can debate things till the cows come home, but like if you want to be proactive for your health, I think pretty much anyone would argue that like being out in nature, being in a less populated area would probably be better for you. I mean, from a sanity perspective, from an EMF perspective, air pollution, noise pollution, the whole nine yards. And that's why it's an underrated health hack. And for whatever reason, it costs more money to live in the cities. So I never really understood that.
Yeah.
And yeah, just give it a shot, if anything. But it was cool talking to the industry insider, and I'm definitely gonna use that connection in the future, maybe on 6G experiments. But we kind of went back and forth, and he was like arguing the kind of nuances and was saying that holding a cell phone to your head is going to be way higher, and I agree, like totally. The way you use, and you kind of got into that when I hopped off, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure, is like distance is always going to be most important. So the way you use your technology and then creating, yeah, that sleep sanctuary like you mentioned is imperative. So that's really the
Oh my gosh, we lost him again. I may have to take us out here in a second when he gets back. But premise of the story is with the Age of Light event is that a lot of cool things are on the horizon for areas. I'll let him get back into it. See if I'm actually having fun with this. I hope you guys are. I know it's in and out, but the spontaneity is fun for me. See if Tristan can reconnect here. So yeah, it is like an epic battle because it's like, man, if I move to El Salvador, it's like, will I ever be able to upload anything ever again? We'll see. The story continues. The never-ending story that is life. But I'm sure you could get pretty good internet and then still turn off the Wi-Fi. Let's see if he can get back. Let me message him. Also, Twitter. I need to, or Twitter, man, I'm still using that. X. I need to apologize because normally I have the chat on for you guys. And I realized while I was setting up the stream and we went live that it doesn't automatically tick the box of allowing chat on. So there's no chat on X. And I feel so bad because I'm sure there's probably a lot of dumb things I have said that you can correct me on in the chat that I will never get to know. So next time we do these streams every Tuesday, we'll be interviewing. Let's see who is next week. Next Tuesday, I think we're talking to Zimmerman next week, I believe. But that should be a very exciting conversation, sort of continuing on a sort of quantum discussion. But that should be very exciting as well. Hopefully, Tristan will be all right. You back? We did it.
All right, I moved, so I'm next to the Wi-Fi router. I don't know.
Perfect. Taking one for the team.
How much of a difference that's gonna take? It's gonna make.
I was just sort of recapping because I thought we could probably take this out in a second because the connection's been so wacko. You there?
Is that better or no?
I hear you. Maybe you can say some stuff and I'll let you know.
could probably just take us out then, Ryan.
Yeah, cool. Well, next week we're going to be talking to Zimmerman, which will be a very exciting conversation, I believe, on Tuesday at 4 p.m.
I would just say just take us out then. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We'll have a podcast with Sarah Kleiner coming out this Friday covering leptin resistance, which we haven't had on the podcast before. So that'll be pretty exciting. Got a lot of live shows packed up in the next couple weeks. And Tristan will be slumming it up in his nice, shanky bungalow that I'm very jealous of. And you guys, after the show, if you do not go outside and take your shirts off and just enjoy the sun, I will be very disappointed. So everyone have a great rest of your day. And you can comment all the wonderful things that I messed up in the comment section, both on X and on YouTube. Have a good one, you guys. And thanks for joining us for another episode of Decentralized Radio. Scott Zimmerman, yes.